Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the new moon in the third decan of Gemini. I hope that you're doing well out there, my friends, enjoying this Thursday afternoon, doing a little bit of a different day. I got my purple for Zeus on this Thursday, which is the day of Jupiter. So we're going to go on a little bit of a journey today. We're going to break down all the elements of the new moon that is going to be happening in the final 10 degrees of Gemini over the weekend. And we're going to take the new moon through the houses just to show you some things that you might be able to expect via your rising sign. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, please put them in the chat box there. I love interacting with all of you. It's nice to be back here today after a week off. Been doing a lot of things here in Gemini season, juggling a lot of different projects and responsibilities, as I'm sure many of you are as well. But we've come to the choosing point, and I will try to help break that down today. We will also look at a couple of slides from my Decans of Gemini webinar, which is on sale, by the way, for 20% off until the end of Gemini season, which is June the 21st. So make sure you pick that up if you are interested in learning more. And as always, I'm available for readings if you need help. I love interacting with all of you. You can find the booking link at my website, spencermichaud.com. I have all sorts of different types of readings, including natal readings, oracular readings, where we take a look at one specific issue, transit readings, which is called Kairos on my channel. I do tutoring as well. So I really love interacting with you. You can find that on my website. And we'll go over a few other things today. I've got a lot of things circulating in my mind. I'm seeing a lot of friends stopping in, so I'm going to welcome all of you here today. Rachel Fletcher is joining us from Roanoke, Virginia. Hello, Rachel. Nice to see you, friend. I love the little deer emoji there. Reverend Kai is here from Kansas, giving us a sunflower sunshine energy today. Hello, Kai. Dimphy is here from the Netherlands. Hello, Dimphy. Been enjoying your gardening pictures. If you all haven't been checking out my Instagram, I've been sharing a lot more of the progress of my wildflower garden as well. Got our first little flowers in the last few days. They're little tiny babies. There's a story up on my Instagram at Spencer Michaud right now, where it looks like it's a big flower, but it's actually just a little tiny white flower. It's pretty cool though. You got to start small. So thanks, Dimphy, for sharing your garden as well. It's always an inspiration to see how people are connecting with the earth around the world. Faye is here from Arizona. Hello, Faye. Nice to see you, my friend. Marjorie Cottrell is joining from Pennsylvania. Welcome, Marjorie. Robert is here from Kalamazoo. Nice to see you, Robert. Go Lions. Oh boy, blasphemy coming from a Packers fan. But, you know, us folks in Michigan here, I'm in enemy territory. So it is nice to see your local neighbors and fans have some hope about the season and then eventually crush it with your other team that no, I'm just messing with you. I love the friendly NFC North rivalries we have here in the Midwest of the United States for NFL football. Laura Etta is here from Vancouver, Washington. Hello, Laura. Nice to see you, friend. Monique is stopping in. Hello, Monique. Welcome, my friend. Hope you're doing well today. Tarja is here from Finland. Nice that we catch the Taurus moon. Some of that was intentional. As astrologers, we know some of the moods that might be more fortuitous for doing stuff. Mostly I did it today because I was planning on going on vacation tomorrow. But Gemini season had some other plans, so I'm having to readjust my schedule. And I'll talk more about that as we examine the new moon, because I think there's a lot of themes wrapped up within that maybe I can share some of my experiences that'll help us contextualize some of this. Steven the Jupiterian is here, morning from sunny San Francisco. The sun is finally out. All right, very good, very good. Beth Cummings joining us from the Middle West. Hello, Beth, nice to see you. Slava is here from Bulgaria. Hello, new friend from Bulgaria. That's awesome. Welcome, and hope that we're not keeping you up too late today. Jennifer is here. Hello, Jennifer from my neck of the woods in Michigan, I think. And then Raven. Raven is joining us from Kansas. Hello, Raven. Nice to see you, my friend. Okay, so nice to see all of you here. I'm excited to go on a little journey with you. Um, Again, if you could do me a huge favor, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you are new here, liking the video helps get our message out to more people. Subscribing helps you know when I'm going to be going live, because sometimes it changes. Sometimes my schedule is a little bit, wackadoodle, and I have to go live on a different day. And then finally, please sign up for the email list. You can find that on my website, spencermichaud.com, or in the description of this video. I have some new things I'm going to be launching in the coming weeks and months, and that's the best way to know when you can sign up for things. I've got a new guided group study cohort, I guess you could call it, that's going to be starting in July, and I'm going to be releasing the promotional material and the live link for that probably starting next week after this new moon. I'm really excited. We're going to be doing, I've chosen the book. We're going to be doing The Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot by Marcus Katz and Tally Goodwin. So this is a really cool book. This is a book that really examines and contextualizes the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and specifically through the types of experiences Pamela Coleman Smith was going through when she created the art for the deck. So it is really great to see how the deck was created within the time and space that it was created within. This is something that the book club that we've been doing recently, The Flowering Wand, has really been teaching us. So we're almost done with The Flowering Wand by Sophie Strand. And the main takeaways here with The Flowering Wand by Sophie Strand is really that we have a set of symbols and archetypes that are sort of this mycelial network, this underground network, that are waiting to erupt and emerge like the fruiting body of a mushroom for the specific time and place that symbol is needed. And it may come in a slightly different form for a different culture, for a different time frame, for a different person. It's going to speak a little bit of a different language, whatever language it needs to speak for the message to land. And I think that to be able to really truly understand the tarot, and in turn the decans of astrology, which are closely intertwined with this tarot deck on some level, seeing the context that deck was born from is going to be really valuable for our understanding of the symbols themselves. So I hope that you'll join me for that. Again, the link is probably going to be live in the next week. So if you want to get the first chance to understand when that's going to be going, sign up for the email list. I tried to think about if I could just power through to get it out today, but it just wasn't happening, friends. We're in a balsamic moon. I think it'd be better for me to launch it around the new moon. So this is something I'm learning with, especially studying nature and gardening. Sometimes you can't force things, right? This has been really a week that has been teaching us that we shouldn't really try to force things. We have we've had a lot of squares with Saturn. We've had Mercury squaring Saturn this week, and there's just been a lot of projects that I've been going through personally, and maybe you have as well. Let me know in the chat, where I've been trying to really move forward, but there's these obstacles that are really slowing us down. I think part of that is the stationing of Saturn. Saturn is stationing to turn retrograde over the weekend on the 17th. So everything feels like it's at a snail's pace, or that there's bureaucratic red tape to wade through, or things of that nature. And then there's a lot of things that are competing for our attention and for our energy right now. And trying to balance all those things out. That's just the challenges of life, isn't it? So we'll talk about how to hopefully do that gracefully as we come to the point in the Gemini cycle where we've explored, right? I'll go through this as a journey with the cards and with the decans. But I wanted to kind of address that we've started off Gemini season with this feeling. This is the 8 of Swords, where we see a figure that is bound. And this is a Jupiter ruled decan where we have an explosion of options that may cause us to feel a paralysis, right? Because there's so many paths we could explore, moving in any one direction and committing to any one direction might be difficult. So we may feel a little paralyzed. Once we get further on in the process, we may be dealing with this Nine of Swords energy in the second 10 degrees of Gemini, where we understand the choices in front of us. We're weighing the advantages and disadvantages, going back and forth, and it may be creating some anxiety. So this is something where we might be feeling this kind of, anxious, sleepless energy that we see with this figure in the Nine of Swords. This is a Mars decan. So we're going from Jupiter to Mars. And, let me see here. I'm looking at my notes because T. Susan Chang had a really interesting way of contextualizing this that I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss. Well, I can't find that right at the moment, but I feel like the first part of this is some kind of frustration that we feel and feeling frozen in the first decan. Then we have an anxiety in the second decan. And then finally, there is a surrender that we see here in the third decan with the 10 of Swords, with the figure with these 10 swords in his back here. And this really refers to the ability to finally let go of some of the other options that aren't our highest priorities. This is really, I think, a reference to the story of Castor and Pollux, one of our seminal Gemini myths. And really the story goes is that one of these twins is mortal, Castor, the horseman, and the other twin is immortal, Pollux, the boxer. And they get in this kind of conflict with another set of twins, and Castor's slain. And he, he's dead. He because he's mortal, obviously, and his brother is in mourning. And he kind of begs Zeus to allow him to sacrifice some of his immortality, his time on Olympus, so that his brother can live again. So they start to exchange time in the underworld and on Olympus. So there is something that may need to be sacrificed so that we can breathe life into something that is important to us. And I think that's really the big shift here. A lot of the times with Gemini, we fear making the wrong choice. We fear letting go of possibilities. We fear narrowing our focus. We have this grass is greener on the other side type of experience. And ultimately, if we try to keep every option open, we're never able to fully commit to the things that really make our heart sing, or the responsibilities that are most prominent in our life at any given time. It's not just about what is your heart's desire. Sometimes it's like, this thing needs a priority right now, or needs to become a priority, or you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt later. So those are some things to consider. Responsibilities may be taking precedence as we approach this new moon. The other thing that I can kind of think about with this is that this decan is one that tends to cast things in high contrast. So there is this energy of all or nothing, either or. Ultimatums are part of this decan, where we sort of say that this is going to happen, or this consequence is going to happen. We have to be careful of doing that. We have to be careful of, giving people in our lives idealistic ultimatums that they, may or may not be able to live up to, because we may regret that later. A lot of times, with Gemini season, we can get enamored with an ideal of how things are supposed to be, especially right now with a Sun-Neptune square, okay? And when the things do not match up to our idealism, which here's our 10 of Cups energy right here. This is what the decan that Neptune's in. When we don't see this, right? When we emotionally, this is what we're shooting for. But when we don't see this in our lives, we can start to issue these, like, it's my way or the highway ultimatums. You could become the executioner's sword. And that can leave us in a really vulnerable position if we haven't really thought through the consequences of all the things that might entail. So this is another part of this lunation cycle that I think is really important, is how can we work through the choices that we have to make without backing ourselves into a corner that we'll have difficulty getting back out from. So I'm seeing more people stop in here. So I'm just going to welcome a few more folks. I'm loving all the new comments coming in. KP1231's joining us from Cleveland. Hello, friend. Reverend Kai says, I can't seem to grasp onto any projects with enthusiasm lately, except for my garden, where I spend every minute I can. Yeah, I'm with you there, Kai. There's been a heaviness in the air recently, and I don't know if other people are feeling it, but we'll examine that when we talk about Saturn's role in this lunation cycle. There's definitely a lot of reevaluation of how we seek meaning and purpose in life. And oftentimes when we are having trouble connecting with idealistic purpose, I think you're doing exactly the thing that can bust us out of that. Just connecting with the earth, getting your hands dirty, dealing with what you can see in front of you rather than worrying about something that is maybe more abstract. I think getting into the concrete sometimes can be a really good exercise, dealing with some of the challenges that we have. Stephen says the song Let It Go comes to mind too. Yeah. One of the songs of the week that I posted in my newsletter. I've been doing a song of the week type of thing in the newsletter when I send a newsletter out. And this week it was Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings, which interestingly enough, Paul McCartney is a Gemini 3 sun and midheaven. So he wrote a song that was, really reflected the energy of figuring out what needs to live and what we need to let die and return to the earth. That doesn't mean that we can't revisit the thing that we're not infusing our emotional energy into. We may be able to circle back to it at some point. One really interesting thing that I really enjoyed in my studies with Nightlight Astrology was really Adam Ellenbos pointing out that Gemini is an ambitious sign. It is still a sign in the northern hemisphere where the sun is climbing in declination. So that basically means the sun is rising higher at noon in the sky visibly every day. So we feel like we're trying to move towards something. We're trying to move towards completion of some sort. But once it hits Cancer, the summer solstice, that sun starts to rise lower in the sky each day. So there's a shift of direction. And this is one thing that you might think about if you have a lot of Gemini placements in your chart, is maybe you really pursue something with fervor and passion, and you finally reach it and you change your mind. And you're like, oh okay, now I'm on to something else. I observed my Gemini sun mother do this all the time. She would get really passionate about something. And then when she, absorbed all the information she could, like she was on to the next thing, like a bee pollinating a flower, right? I really find the bee and flower metaphor pretty apropos for Gemini season, because we're just flitting from one flower to the next. I posted a story of the bumblebees in my garden that are joining us now. Like there's some beautiful flowers in my garden that have started to bloom, and we've got a lot of bumblebee visitors, and it just feels very, very Gemini with the pollination energy. So I think that that's a way to feel more relaxed around this period of time, is realizing that no, you can't pursue every path. No, you can't give your best effort to every single priority and project in your life. But that doesn't mean that project that you choose to let go of is going to be gone forever, right? This was the cycle with the twins, with Castor and Pollux, was that they got to exchange time on Olympus. So maybe there's a project that lies in the underworld for a period of time, but eventually it'll rise again to Olympus if it's really that important to you. Sometimes we have ideas and projects that we get a little, we get a little spark in our brain, and we're like, that would be cool to pursue, and then eventually it dies of its own accord because it really didn't have enough foundation behind it. If something is truly important to you, you're gonna circle back to it, even if the timing isn't right for that particular project to manifest right now. There's a lot of energy in the air right now that is asking us to really question which of these projects wants to live and which ones want to die. I don't know about all you, but there's been a lot of things going on here, like, that have been competing for my attention. Like, I have been doing a lot of work in my garden. I Before I had a number of other projects crop up in my life. My partner and I, Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo, check her out on Etsy for her wonderful planetary magical materia. We ordered a number of pollinator plants, like a flat of plugs. Plugs are like these little, they're about this big, and they're like an inch, around. And we ordered over 100 of them, thinking we were going to have June as a really chill month to just, redesign the landscape in our home. That was our big project for June. And over the course of life, as happens, things come up that you didn't expect, right? We're having some changes in our living situation here. Tanya's car broke down, so we've had to have I've had to take her to work every day and pick her up from work every day, which has been disruptive in my routine. We've gone down the path of searching for a new vehicle because her vehicle needs to be replaced now. And there's so many choices. There's so many options. There's, do you want good gas mileage? How much room do you want in the car? Like, there's all these considerations. And it's like that alone, buying a new car could be one huge project. The pollinator habitat could be its own huge project. There's some other bureaucratic things going on in my life that I've had to deal with like, just like medical things and things like that, where that is its own project. There's just so many things right now that seem to be competing. I was supposed to go on a vacation this weekend up in the northern part of Michigan. And at the end of the day, what Tanya and I decided was that one of these things has to die. One of these things has to be let go of right now. Maybe not permanently, but temporarily. The last straw was I sort of did this thing where I was, instead of trying to get all the plants in the ground before we went on vacation, I was like, let me order these pots, right? Let me order these little 4-inch pots and transplant all of these little baby plants so that we buy ourselves some more time before we have to put everything in the ground. Because putting everything in the ground that's one part of it. But what we're looking at here is removing a ton of sod from our yard, which is a big project, a lot of backbreaking work, multiple day effort. And each of these plants requires 1 to 2 feet of space between each other. So it's not a little project, it's a big one. And at the end of the day, this week, we looked at each other and we're like, you know what? We need to get this vehicle thing handled. We need to get these plants in the ground. And instead of being able to transplant these things in these 4-inch pots that I ordered online, the pots were too short. The pots were like actually shorter than the plugs themselves. And that was the moment when I laid on the ground like this figure and just stared up at the sky and was like, I give up. I surrender. I'm trying to force all these things. This project isn't going to work the way that I think it is right now. Something's got to go. So we decided to delay our trip. That was our moment where we chose consciously to say, you know what? This is the lowest priority right now. We need to take care of these other things, like a vehicle's top priority. Getting those plants in the ground before they get too big for those little containers is a next priority. Some of this other bureaucratic stuff is not as time sensitive, but should be. Um, and I think that at the end of the day, something like a trip can be rescheduled. It can be pushed to the back burner. It can lay fallow in the underworld, ready to be born again at a different time. So that's like a practical example, I hope, of this Gemini 3 energy that we're working with right now, that we're probably still going to be working with through this new moon cycle. Okay, I'm just going to look through the chat here, see where we're at, see if you have your stories here too. Josh is here. Josh, greetings from St. Louis. Many thanks for the reading a couple weeks ago. Good to see you, Josh. I hope you're doing well. I really enjoyed our chat. Josh and I had a really nice reading, and really intelligent friend. Keep your eyes peeled for him. He's a talented astrologer who I think is going to do some great things out here in the world. Mortal and Wild, Carol is here. Hello, Carol. Hey, just got here. Had a water emergency to deal with, but got half a water butt of free water. Okay, good. I'm glad it's working out. Carol and I have been going back and forth on this little seed thing that she posted. This little seed pod that was jumping around, and it sort of looked like a dried out frog or newt egg. But if anyone has any ideas of what a little tiny, like smaller than a dime sized jumping egg like thing might be in England, let us know. We're trying to solve that mystery. Jennifer says, having a TSQU, by the way. What is that? Oh, a T-square. T-square, by the way, Saturday, 10th house, Mars first, and Pluto and Venus. Oh, my. Well, we'll try to contextualize that for you, Jennifer. I believe you're a Cap rising, so we'll see if we can figure that out. I apologize if I'm not remembering your rising sign correctly. Marjorie says, yes, very been there, done that type of thing. Yes. It's been a lot of that energy, right? Tracy Gorman is here. Says, this Leo Sun, Libra rising, Gemini moon in the 9th gets it. Always buzzing around. Yeah, Tracy. I mean, that's it's a flitting energy. We're flitting from one flower to the next, right? We're kind of just exploring, tasting, trying to figure out what really inspires us. And eventually, as we move into Cancer season is really about which of these choices do we want to nurture into maturity. So we'll have the opportunity to really infuse life into our highest priorities. Jennifer says, a lot of this resonates when picking daisies and sweet peas in the field next door yesterday. Okay, good. Marjorie says, this speaks so clearly to me right now. I love this perspective. All right. Well, this is why I share stories. I mean, we're all living these stories. This is something that another really great part of Sophie Strand's Flowering Wand book is the ability to craft a shared narrative, the ability to tell stories that are going on concurrently in our life. This is going to be part of some of my programs moving forward. Is we are going to examine things from a technical perspective. You all know me. I enjoy the technical contextualization. But we're also going to be sharing our stories. And while we share those stories, we are going to look at the technical aspects. So it really is an interactive and I don't know if practical is the right word, but what we're doing is we're trying to connect the lived experience with the symbol that we can see in a chart or in a tarot card or things of that nature. And I love learning that way. That way of learning feels very alive to me and very useful, right? I having a lot of Virgo planets in my chart, I want something to be immediately useful if I'm teaching it to somebody. And storytelling, collective storytelling is one of the ways that Hermes teaches, through stories. So yes, keep telling your stories here in these chats, friends. I love learning from your stories as well. I mean, I know that maybe some of you are learning from the experiences I'm going through, but that's just one experience in a polyphony of stories, a symphony of stories. This is another thing. I love this book. If you haven't read this book, get it, okay? Because she's a poet, and so wise, and talking about how there is room for an oboe, there's a room for a double bass, there's room for a violin in a symphony. And each of these instruments is our individual stories, our individual experiences. They all have very different timbres. They all have very different sounds. They all have different roles within the symphony itself. And they come together in an assemblage to make beautiful music. Sometimes for a long time, sometimes for a very short time. This is the other thing too that this book is teaching me is nature being an assemblage. It's not always a permanent condition. Sometimes there are ecosystems that are constantly in motion, constantly in flux, constantly changing. And this is another thing we have to learn about Gemini season is that we are constantly changing. And when we try to hold on too tightly to one idea, to one way of thinking about a situation, that actually causes the suffering. I mean, here's the suffering of getting too attached to one particular outcome, one particular method, one particular narrative in your life. And that flexibility is going to liberate you. Okay. Tracy says, I was just about to mow the lawn when I saw this live. Okay, Tracy. Well, stick some headphones on, mow the lawn. I don't know. I don't mean to keep you from yard work, but hopefully I can make the work go a little quicker if you're multitasking today. Yeah, Tarya is confirming that Gemini season has been crazy busy time. I agree. Stephen has been working on repainting a face on a mannequin head for a hairstylist friend of mine, also working on other projects as well. Well, there you go. Okay, that sounds like a creative project that you're doing, Stephen. Jennifer said, my dad just got out of rehab at 81 years old and wanted him to come live with me, but had to let go of him wanting to still live by himself. Okay, so that's a choice, right? Trying to keep something, one option alive, to be able to infuse life into the situation that is the highest priority right now, which is, being able to, have independence at that age. That's something where we're, he may be having to come to terms with release. And, the easier time we're going to have with it is when we don't fight the current of our life, when something really just needs to happen, right? Oh, and yeah, Jennifer says Gemini rising 28 degrees. Okay, so you're living this new moon there, Jennifer. Or your father is, if that's your father's rising. I'm sorry. Carol says, I think you might be right about the newt. The little green thing inside was swaying when I moved it to a safe space. Oh, okay. Good. Well, Carol, what I would suggest is look up some symbolism related to newts and salamanders, because that may be a message for you, is that there's maybe a little baby newt and salamander energy trying to reach you right now. Lisa's here. Hello, Lisa. Nice to see you, friend. Lisa, we were talking about the previous book club book, which is The Flowering Wand by Sophie Strand, which I've been really enjoying. We're coming to the end of that cycle for guided group study, and we're going to be launching within the next week or so the next guided group study for the summer, where we're going to be reading The Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot by Marcus Katz and Tally Goodwin. And if you want to know when that's going to be live and you can sign up for it, sign up for the email list, because I'm probably launching that sometime shortly after the new moon. Okay. Oh yeah, Jennifer says she's a Gemini rising and he's a Sag rising. Well, there you go. You all are on the axis. And that's an interesting point, Jennifer, because both of you have mutable rising signs. And whenever we have a lunation, like a new or a full moon, in an angular house, 1, 10, 7, or 4, we're going to feel it a little bit more personally. There's going to be it's going to be more focused on us specifically, rather than maybe having it be a little bit more about the people around us. We're going to feel it really intensely. I'm ready for a new moon that's not in a fixed sign. So I'll be hopefully This one will be a little bit gentler than some of the last ones have been. Yeah, Lisa, a lot of you have been asking about more deep dives into the tarot. So this book I think is one of my favorite tarot books right now. And I think one that is really going to help us to understand the context of how that deck was born. It's also just a tarot teaching tool. It's not just history. It does talk about card significations and things of that nature. So really excited and looking forward to that. Okay. Jody's here. Hello, Jody. Hello from South Florida. Nice to see you, friend. Okay. So that's story time for the very beginning stages here. What do you say we open up the chart and take a look at some of the themes via the chart? So here is our chart, and we are looking at the new moon in Gemini 3, and this is going to be, the moon's going to be becoming new on June 18th, Sunday, 12:37 a.m. Depending on your place and time, it could be a different day. But we're seeing the sun and the moon coming together, which always happens at a new moon, at 26 degrees of Gemini. And for those of you who are newer to astrology, I talk a lot about the decans on this channel. And a decan is a 10-degree section of a sign. And in this case, we're talking about the final 10-degree section of Gemini. And each of those 10-degree sections has its own planetary ruler, tarot card from the minor arcana, and like a spirit that is associated with it. There's all sorts of layers to this, and if you want a deeper dive into this, there's actually a free talk I did on the decans that's on my YouTube channel. I was a guest speaker for the Nightlight speaker series, and that talk is free on my channel. I believe it's called Face Off, like incorporating the decans into your practice. And I have a little hockey, player on there. But there's so many lenses that you can look at the decans throughout history through. The one that I generally like to stick to, just because this is one I've become entrained to, it's like a radio dial that I've tried to tune into, is the spirits from a Hellenistic fragment text called the 36 Heirs of the Zodiac. If you're looking for it online, search for Cosmos of Jerusalem, COMSAS, or COSMAS of Jerusalem. And there's a little PDF that you can download from Scribd or something like that. It's only like 1 or 2 pages long, but there's a lot of wisdom to be gleaned from that. And in this decan, we're dealing with a spirit called Praxidike. And Praxidike is the exactor of justice. So this is where, when Austin Coppock in his book 36 Faces talks about the executioner's sword, it's a direct reference to Praxidike. Okay, so here is the energy of saying we have to eliminate some of these options. It's a solar decan, so we're getting some awareness of where these choices are going to lead us. All right. We also, because it's a solar decan, we are seeing dualities in high contrast, as I talked about earlier. So we may be even getting we have to be careful to not get too fixated on saying, no, this got to go permanently forever. What I'm trying to do is soften the choice that you're making by saying that you don't have to eliminate every single part of a choice forever, right? Like if one part of let's say a part of your relationship isn't working, you don't have to execute the relationship if you're working on one part that you want to eliminate. That's one of the things that can be challenging in this decan, is saying, this isn't working, so the whole thing's got to go. Like I've dealt with some Gemini 3s in my life that were that became a nemesis of sorts, and that was the type of energy that created a lot of conflict between us, was the all or nothing, black or white type of thinking, where if one little part of something wasn't working, then everything had to be blown up, and that created a lot of tension. So just be very careful about that in your life right now, that you may be dissatisfied with something in your life, but try to see it as dealing with the specific challenge itself rather than conflating everything into one container and saying, I've got to just eliminate everything about this, right? It's easy to do. I've been guilty of it in the past, and I've had to catch myself and say, you know what, I don't have to release this idea completely or this relationship or whatever it is. I just need to focus on the one part of it that isn't working. And everybody is going to have different, requirements around that. I was looking at this kind of, it was like a reel on Instagram the other day about relationships, and a lot of the times in relationships, and this is apropos for Gemini, because Gemini, we tend to have a lot of projection energy. We're dealing with others. There's a lot of communication energy because Gemini is a Mercury ruled sign. We tend to project our shadow onto an other. And this is something that Liz Green talks a lot about in her book, The Astrology of Fate, for the Gemini section specifically. Oftentimes when we have something unresolved, an unresolved duality within us, we're projecting it onto somebody else. And that can lead to a lot of conflicts. That can lead to a lot of doubt about our relationships with others, etc. And this reel was talking about how relationships are never 50-50. Relationships are always some combination of, sometimes you're at a 20, sometimes you're at 80, sometimes you're full and you're having to uplift the other. Sometimes both of you are at a 10. And that's when relationships get really tough. Whenever your energy levels don't add up to 100, that's when the conflicts really start in a relationship. So what do you do at those times when both of you in a relationship don't have enough to give to the other? And that's when the patience comes in. That's where the grace comes in. That's where the acceptance that our best in that moment may not be the ideal, but it may be the best that we have in that day, and it may change the next day. It may change the next week. It doesn't mean that you allow, abuses to go on. Doesn't mean that you ignore things that are dysfunctional within a relationship. It just means that if you're expecting everything to be sliced down the middle equal, that's really just not the reality of how relationships work. Some of you may have better balances than others, and those balances are fluid. Again, one person in the relationship may be pulling a lot of weight for a particular time, and then the other person may be taking over at different times. For example, like I've been doing a lot of driving, like in the last little while, and it's been, if I'm honest, it's been taking away from my normal routine and my work. Like it's been making my work a more difficult because I need to drive my partner back and forth from work. But that's a priority. She needs to get to work, and that's a sacrifice that I have to make in the moment that I'm willing to make because I love her, right? And there's been sacrifices that she's made for me over the course of the years that have taken away from maybe something that she wanted to do, but she loves me. Those are the exchanges that we're trying to reconcile throughout this. So that's a long-winded way of saying, back off the ultimatums. If you're feeling a need to make one of those during this time, and see if you can find an innovative solution. I'm going to look through the chat here and see what you all think of some of those things. Lisa's here with a 23 Gemini on the MC. So you have the same midheaven, Lisa, as Paul McCartney. He has a 23-degree Gemini midheaven, and I believe this new moon's going to be right on his sun. So I'm curious if something comes out. Actually, there is already something coming out with Paul McCartney. I was going to say this new moon's going to put him in the spotlight somehow, but I was reading that there is a new Beatles song coming out in the next little bit due to artificial intelligence being able to recreate John Lennon's voice on this recording. So yeah, that's pretty thrusting all of those Beatles into the spotlight type of thing. So that's fun. Jennifer says we're both coming to terms with life's complications. Yeah, this is you and the other, right? And this is we're dealing with a lot of partnership issues right now with the twin energy. Dimfy says, me as a Gemini ascendant, again, the loss of a longtime friend last weekend and the approaching farewell of my old feline, Nini. Oh no, I'm sorry, Dimfy. That's such a difficult transition. And I'm referring more to the cat. it's tough saying goodbye to longtime friends, but I, in my experience, have found that losing a pet companion is so hard. It's one of the hardest things I've ever experienced because I'm a kind of a homebody and a hermit, and those cats, dogs, gerbils, birds, they do a lot of heavy lifting for us introverts, and it's a difficult transition. Pets really teach us the lesson of unconditional love and impermanence because they give it to us so freely, but they're here for such a short period of time, and we can project all sorts of feelings of them being a best friend, a child, etc. And losing them is tough. So I'm sorry, Dimfy, that's going on, and hang in there. Jennifer's talking about all the Geminis and their family. Monique has this right on her son's ascendant. Shout out to Brody and Lindsay, who Lindsay's the most famous listener of this show. She's really famous, you guys. She's one of the most famous listeners of this show. And I'll tell you what, she can sell some Girl Scout cookies. And yeah, look out for Lindsay. She's a star. There you go. And Brody, sorry, Brody, to leave you out, buddy. Like, it looks like you've been doing some fun stuff with your baseball team, and I'm glad that you're getting to have some fun doing some sports, my friend. I'm just shouting out the young listeners, friends. I think that it's nice that we have multi-generational people, multi-cultural people, multi-countries. This is a show for everyone. Dawn says, Dawn is here. Hello. Super late today. Let's see. Dawn says, I thought it was 1 Central. Oh no. Well, you're here now, Dawn. And the beautiful thing is it'll be recorded, and if you missed anything, you can go back and listen to it. Okay, and thank you, Dawn, for the super sticker. Appreciate you, friend. Yeah, that's another way. If you want to support the work that I'm doing, easiest thing you can do is like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, sign up for the email. But if you want to contribute materially to the work that I do, there's a little $ in the chat. It's called a super chat or a super sticker, and that really does support the work that I do here. You can also purchase my webinars. The Decans of Gemini are on sale right now until the 21st, or you can schedule a reading. All of those are ways to support everything that I'm doing here. Okay. Looking through this chat. Oh, everybody is giving condolences to Dimfy. I think everyone here has probably felt, on some level, the pain of losing a pet or a friend or something like that. So we're with you in spirit, Dimfy. Dawn says, check in daily. Loved when Brene Brown shared that a while back too. What percentage are you at today? Yes, referring to the percentage relationship. And checking in with your partner, right? Communication is so key. A lot of the times we make a lot of assumptions about how everyone's doing. And some of us are, better at communicating our emotions and how we're doing. And other people have struggled with it. There's a lot of layers that things go through. And a lot of people sometimes they don't even realize when their tank's getting low, right? We've been so trained to just power through in late stage capitalism and just keep going, keep grinding, keep expanding, keep trying to do all this bullshit. And sometimes we have to compartmentalize and turn off the voices that say, you are burnt out right now. I'm not saying that that's what we should do. I'm just saying that that's a position many of us have been forced into. So if you have someone in your life that isn't communicating with you, it may be because they've just had to compartmentalize a lot of that to get through their day in what is a difficult situation for a lot of people trying to make it through just doing their jobs, affording a house, affording a car, like taking care of kids, taking care of pets. Everyone's got a different challenge, and again, checking in and communication and a little bit of compassion is the key. Laura's here. Hello, Laura. Edda says sort of sounds like saying throwing the baby out, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, that's a good metaphor too, Laura. You don't want to get rid of something that's good just because there's, you got to change the water, right? Marjorie says 26 Geminis on my natal Mars, which is the antitia to my Cancer sun. I can be so all or nothing at times. Thanks for showing me that. Yeah, and you know what? This is the beauty of astrology is when it can show us both our strengths and our weaknesses. It can give us a new awareness of the things that the approaches that we may take. I like to think of the planets as we don't have to follow the influence of every planet in our chart. Oftentimes the planets are subtle suggestions. They may cause a feeling to arise in us that may feel very powerful in the moment. Like there may be a strong feeling, Marjorie, of an all or nothing energy that comes up. But that's where your free will and your choice comes in. You can choose to follow that influence, or you can choose to slow down, practice some breathing techniques or something, and maybe choose a different thing. And certain things are going to be easier and harder for each of us. And that's really the spice of life, right? Like, for me, getting on here and doing these live streams and kind of doing some of it off the cuff is fairly easy. I'm fairly comfortable with that. For someone else, that might be really, really difficult. So, and there's things that are really difficult for me that may be really easy for someone else. Like, I don't know, leaving the house all the time. Like it's hard for me. I don't really like doing that. But for someone else, it may be just like breathing, going and doing social things all the time. So we all have strengths and weaknesses. Jennifer says, so true, Spencer. I've learned a lot in speaking up for myself in the last year. 60-year perfection, Mercury ruled. Yeah, that's a big year, isn't it? When we get into that, believe that's a first house no, is it? Is that first house perfection year, 60? Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that's the first year perfection, so a whole new cycle starting. Okay. Josh says, speaking of the Beatles release, it is like Paul raising John and George from the underworld momentarily, and as a Beatles superfan, mixing AI into this does not bode well with me. Yeah, I hear you, Josh. I think that's a great point as far as like raising John and George from the dead, right? Like he literally is one of the remaining twin. This was something that I put in my newsletter. I said Paul is the twin that lived, and yeah, there is something a little weird about it, isn't it? I agree with like putting words into a dead person's mouth or a song into their mouth is, we're living in strange times. So that's a great point, Josh. Modern Goldilocks, thank you for the super sticker, friend. I appreciate you. All right. Yeah, Don says, I'm with you, Josh. I love most techie stuff, but I struggle with things of this nature. Yeah, we're heading into times where we're really going to have to start examining the ethics of the technology that we're utilizing. And it's an important question that we should continue to ask one another and continue to have the conversation. And what I will say too is that what was once the right answer does not mean that it will be the right answer forever. So we may feel a certain way ethically about something today, and then we may have to pivot because of new circumstances that come up in the future. So I would encourage you, even with your beliefs and your moral fiber, to have some flexibility with that as well. It doesn't mean that you have to just change with every single new fad or something like that. There are some timeless and eternal things, but I think that, to me, as humans, one of our greatest strengths is our flexibility and our adaptability. And we're seeing this with like our need to adapt to a changing climate, to a changing population on the planet, an exploding population on the planet. All these require different approaches, different choices, different values. And I think it's really interesting to see how we can navigate that as a species together. Modern Goldilocks says, here from Sacramento. Very cool. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Well, I appreciate it, Goldilocks. I hope that this is this podcast. I'm just laughing as I'm about to say, is just right for you. I'm sorry, it's such a dad joke. This is a ridiculous show sometimes, but I appreciate that you are here. Okay, so we're looking at this chart of the new moon. We're trying to give some context to Gemini in particular, and so let's break it down. We've got the moon and the sun in the third decan of Gemini. We have the host of this lunation co-present, which it's Mercury. Okay, so we have Mercury in its own domicile, in a very powerful position. Okay, so this lunation has access to all of its preferred resources to make the decision that is most important to you, to breathe life into the thing that the highest priority. You have all of your mental faculties at your disposal, so to speak. Now, the challenge with this is twofold. First of all, Mercury will just have been separating from a square to Saturn, number one. So we have a square to Saturn. So we will have come across some of our limitations before this new moon. I've been going through this with, we've been dealing with exploring our budget for a new car. And we've gone through a number of different idealized budgets, and the research that is done in specific price ranges is very different when you realize that maybe our budget isn't that lucrative. We have to scale it back a little bit, and then you have to start the process over again. So I think that that's part of the Mercury-Saturn square, is coming to terms with some of the limitations before this lunation. And when you do that, when you come to terms with the limitations, that will actually make the choice easier. Yes, it will be frustrating in the moment, but if you accept where you're at, you'll be flowing with circumstances and flowing with the Tao, right? With the current, rather than trying to swim upstream. If you stubbornly go about your business and your idealized version of whatever your reality should be, cough, Neptune and Pisces, square this lunation, that's when you might be starting to create a situation of suffering for yourself. For example, if I have a certain budget that I'm working within, and I'm so fixated on one particular vehicle that I want because I deserve it, and blah blah blah, or whatever, or some feature or whatever, and I go ahead and spend the money anyway, there may be some pain in the future due to not living beyond my means. I'm a big believer of living within your means. This is something that my father preached to me over many years, is living beyond your means causes suffering. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't change your station. You can't, if you expand your means, then your lifestyle can change within that. But oftentimes, especially in America, people are encouraged to live beyond their means because this society and this culture is built on debt. And I am very much not a fan of debt. I don't use credit cards. I've reluctantly taken on a mortgage, but that, the debt that you need is sometimes a house. I haven't had a car payment in a number of years, and this is what's been really difficult for me with the car search, is I really don't want another car payment. And we're trying to figure out how we can do that without getting a giant car payment that will put us under debt water, right? There's a term for this that I really resonate with, and it's called debt slavery. And I know that it's not a one-to-one to actual slavery. I want to really make that clear, because sometimes people talk about debt slavery and then they compare it to like actual, chattel slavery from the late 1800s, and that we don't want to make that mistake. But I do think that there is a lot of feelings of feeling trapped in a debt experience. And how do we accept some of the limitations that we have? One of the ways that you can do that I have learned, and that this lunation may be encouraging us to do, especially with one of the other factors in this lunation, which is Saturn stationing retrograde shortly before the new moon. Here's a concept that I was preached to by my Taurus rising father endlessly. It's called delayed gratification. And delayed gratification is basically the concept of you don't buy it until you can afford it. You save up and then you buy it when you can afford it. And I understand that there are circumstances where that's not always possible, but I do think it is a pretty good way to live your life, as far as saying, you know what? I don't have to immediately gratify that whim or desire in this exact moment. I can put myself in a position where I don't have to be a debt slave, and I can live my life with freedom. In my estimation, in my opinion, time is the greatest wealth. And for me, I'm always making the calculations of, when I purchase something, how much time am I trading for this thing? And it's really led to a lot of different choices in life. And I think it's important to kind of consider that, especially with Saturn stationing retrograde on Saturday the 17th, learning to live within your means, practicing delayed gratification. And this isn't totally an easy thing to do, okay? Because every type of advertising in Western civilization is set up to encourage you towards instant gratification. So this isn't just, oh, you need to have some discipline. This is like you have to fight to embrace the concept of delayed gratification. You have to be super strong. You have to be willful, right? You have to like swim against the current of being bombarded by information that is trying to manipulate you into instant gratification. So I hear you, I feel you. Don't feel bad if you've fallen short of the delayed gratification glory. There's always ways to practice that as you move into the future. So that's my like little dad advice about like coming directly from my own father, about, living within your means. There's so much stress that can come from being house poor, car poor, time poor, right? That at the end of the day, what is the quality of life that you are trading for the thing that you are purchasing? Now, that being said, sometimes you have to go out and take a risk. Sometimes the flip side of this is sometimes you do have to say, you know what? I can expand my flow of abundance. I can open up to an abundant world. And that is going to look different for every single person. I'm not saying that every single person has to live, a Spartan existence. That's not fair. But I do think that there is going to be a different threshold of what you deem as your values and what is valuable to you. And again, you don't have to, I think that the real crux of it is not comparing yourself to someone else, and living within the value structure that is appropriate for you, rather than comparing yourself to someone else who may need or have different needs. And this is part of the projection energy of Gemini, so we don't want to project too much. So factors involved, we've got a square with Neptune, and the Neptune card that Neptune is moving through is the 10 of Cups, right? The third decan of Pisces. And this is a decan that is really about, what are you willing to sacrifice for your dream? And it's a Mars ruled decan. So think about that for a minute. We've got Mars hanging out, the Mars room in a Jupiter temple. Okay. So this is saying, what are you willing to fight for? What are you willing to sacrifice for to achieve your idealistic dream? And that may be coming into conflict with all of the choices that you have. Okay. Now, Saturn in the first decan of Pisces has been encouraging us to get real with the narratives that shape our reality, the mythologies that craft the underground mycelium of our life. And mycelium is the underground network of a mushroom that is connected to all these different things. So we all have neural pathways that look very much like mushroom mycelium in our brains that are encouraging us to take actions based on our past experiences. Everybody has it. And if they say that they aren't, they're lying, because we're all an accumulation of our experiences and our belief systems and all of these things. And Saturn says, which of these things do you want to craft your life around? Which of these things are operating unconsciously in your life? And are they serving you, or are they a limitation? Are they a palace? Are they a prison? Which of these dreams that are operating below the surface of your life are worthy of continuing to put energy into, and which ones need to die? So Saturn is the ultimate alarm bell, and I mean that like in an alarm that is saying the time has come, right? It's time to get up. It's time to wake up. It's endings. It's a completion process. So which dreams have completed and no longer are vital, and which ones need to become real? Saturn is also a planet that concretizes things into reality. So by Saturn stationing, number one, Saturn is a planet that moves excruciatingly slow. If you try to skip any steps in a Saturn cycle, you're going to be met with all sorts of roadblocks and brick walls. So this is a time where it feels like things are slowing way down. Okay, like Mercury is a planet that wants to move quickly. It wants to. It's one of the swiftest moving planets in the zodiac, right? And the problem that we have when we have Saturn in Pisces and a stack up in Gemini is that Saturn is in the overcoming square to the lunation, to Mercury, to all this Gemini exploration. It's saying, slow down. What are your values? What does this mean? Are you thinking this through? And Saturn's going to be retrograding for, let's look at it. I believe for a number of months. I believe it's till November, but I have this handy dandy thing on here. There it is, November the 4th. There is Saturn's direct motion at 0 degrees of Pisces. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning of the sign. So you may have some value reevaluations that are happening throughout the most of the rest of 2023. So slow your roll, figure out what's most important to you, figure out what you need to let go of, and how you're going to move forward, crafting the structures of your life. Okay, so we go back to the chart here. We always look for the helpers in these charts. So we have Saturn in an overcoming square. That's the hindrance. That's the malefic that's saying, this might be a no, right? We do have a benefic planet that is sextiling. So we do have Mercury sextiling the lunation and Mercury, okay? A Mercury-Venus sextile. And Mars is sextile the bi-whole sign as well. So we've got these Leonine energies. We've got Venus and Mars in Leo, the second decan of Leo, which is consecrated or syncretized with the 6 of Wands, which shows a figure that is returning home from battle victorious. And so this is like a military victory or something like that. Someone being acknowledged for their skill or for their prowess, but they're on a parade back to make a sacrifice at the temple of Zeus. So it is not just their own victory that is being celebrated. It is not just their own ego. It is an acknowledgement that they received divine grace as well. So think about this in those terms and in that context also, is that we may be very much desiring acknowledgement for who we are, who and what we are. We may be attracted, Venus, to authenticity, Leo. We may be fighting for to be seen or to be respected. But it's not just us. It's how can we come into alignment with the Jupiterian Zeus energy of that decan, and acknowledge the grace that we've been given along the path that has led to our victories. So gratitude is one of the biggest parts of that decan, I think, is not just saying, look at me. It's saying, look at all of the people that helped me to get to where I am, type of thing. Okay, it's a parade. It's not a singular person. It is a collective, collaborative effort. Okay. We also in this chart have Pluto is retrograded back into Capricorn. So there's probably going to be some structural, bureaucratic red tape to go through. I'm dealing with all sorts of bureaucracy this week. I'm not going to go too far into depth with that, but it's just a pain in the butt and a lot of like paperwork that needs to be filled out for basic things in your life, and it's very stressful. Whenever you're dealing with like a slow moving government entity and you have to fill out all sorts of paperwork around things, it can, there's a lot of frustration that can come out. So I bet some of you are probably experiencing this on some level as well. Let me look through the chat here. Let's see. Paul is here. It says 4 Taurus planets. Well, okay, Paul. You're getting a dose of Jupiter in the North Node and Uranus. It says nice jerseys, nice restaurant, and hard work to completion. Tauruses are amazing. Okay. Paul's getting his own victory parade right there today. Chris Peterson is here. Says my birthday is June 18th. I have my sun and moon in Gemini natally. Wow, Chris. So Chris, you are going to have a pretty interesting birthday and birth year, since that's going to be reflected in your solar return. So I guess, Chris, my advice would be just be careful about your choices. Try to stay flexible as you are figuring out what stays and what goes. And you might not be able to keep every option open this year, right? And it might be time to choose. And that's okay. Again, you can circle back to it at another time if it's really, truly a priority. Okay. Dimphy says, perhaps then a motorcycle. Dimphy, I will tell you, I've been on a motorcycle one time in my life. My stepdad had a Kawasaki something, and I was 11 years old, and I got on the back of that thing, and I was absolutely terrified out of my mind the entire time I was on that. I just do not think I have the right type of personality to be a motorcycle person, but to each his own, so I don't know if that's an option for me, but yeah, it would be cheaper. Maybe. Some motorcycles are super expensive. Okay. Lisa says the Saturn piece was very helpful. I'll get trines again to my Scorpio placements. Good. Yeah. The other thing about this Saturn stuff is that once things start to move into Cancer, it's going to start alleviating the tension we're feeling from the overcoming square. So just hang in there. If your mind's just going crazy right now, just hang in there. One of the things that I talk about in my Decans of Gemini webinar is the association with that webinar, or sorry, with Gemini, and I'll show you this here, with the 12th house of the Thema Mundi. Okay, so let's take a look at that real quick. I'll just give you a preview. Okay, this is on sale for a few more days. So one of the things that I talk about in this webinar is the angular triad that a specific set of signs are a part of. And the Thema Mundi is a philosophical natal chart of the world that is a Hellenistic teaching tool. And here you see Gemini as the 12th house in the Thema Mundi, which is a time before birth. This is a time, a pregnant time. It is a time it is a sign that was previously on the ascendant by primary clockwise motion before it moved off the ascendant. So it's being pulled away from a sense of self, but it is also reflecting a time that is past. There's a story that I think is really poignant for the Gemini 12th house energy. And this is the myth of Ur. The myth of Ur is a Platonic teaching tool. It's really an ethical exploration. This is why I think that ethics come in with the Lover's card, which is associated with Gemini. Myth of Ur talks about a Roman soldier that dies and goes into the afterlife and retains his memory. And he sees all of these souls that are dying and having to choose lots for reincarnation, for their next life. So they're given us a handful of lots and they have to choose from them with full awareness, okay, of what all of those lives entail, right? The pros and cons. And thinking about, what is an ethical life? Which kind of life would you want to choose? So there is stress in choice, right? In the 12th house in particular, because we are thinking about the choices of what life are we going to live? What are we going to breathe life into? That's why in the Cancer, transition to Cancer with the 2 of Cups here, we say, here's our choice. This is what we're feeling attracted to. This is the merging of body and spirit after we've chosen our lot. But the transition to the choice period it can be stressful. It can be a very 12th house experience. A lot of ambiguity, a lot of feeling lost, a lot of mental gymnastics. And living as a 12th house person, this type of thinking of the 12th house really makes a lot of sense. I would say that one of my most difficult experiences in life is being decisive. I have the ruler, the sun of my Leo ascendant in Cancer in the 12th house. I also have Venus in the second decan of Gemini here with the 9 of Swords. Making a decision has been very difficult for me in the past. A lot of the times it was because, I've shared this before on the channel, but there were certain conditions in my childhood that pulled me in a lot of different directions. I think that the most poignant one that comes to mind is that when I was about 10 years old, my divorced parents had a giant custody battle where I was sat down in a room with a counselor or a judge or something where they were saying, all right, Spencer, which parent do you want to live with? It's what? Which one do you love more? And I may or may not have had actual agency in affecting the outcome, but to a 10-year-old self, that felt like an enormous amount of pressure and felt like a no-win situation. And I think that type of energy, being split in those different directions, having going back and forth from different households all the time, really influenced my having to think long and hard about decisions. And my dad contributed to this too. He was always like, think before you speak, think before you do. He was very much slow every process down, and maybe even to a fault. So if you have 12th house placements, maybe you also have difficulty with decisions, and you can connect with the myth of Ur, thinking about the ethical ramifications of the decisions that you're going through. And we can connect this with this lunation cycle. Okay, so that's the 12th house and part of this. Okay. I want to show you the 3rd decan here. We've seen this journey from paralysis and frustration to anxiety, and then finally collapse and surrender here. Okay, we've got Jupiter, Mars, Sun, the decans. And again, you can get this on my website, spencermichaud.com. I did a 3-hour examination with a discussion and all these things. But here's Gemini 3. Some of the themes: the darkness before the dawn. Okay, the death of one choice, sacrificing imagined pathways. Malkuth in Yetzirah. Malkuth is the manifestation, right? Yesod, the 9, in the Kabbalistic tree of life, is associated with the moon, the time before manifestation. Here's the manifestation. This is the result of overthinking something to death. You're not going to be able to carry on with that idea into forever, or keep all the options open forever. Collapsing of possibilities into a single reality. Dropping the spinning plates. Okay, releasing indecision. So questions: which twin or option needs to die so that the other can live? Are you allowing ambiguity or making ultimatums? Again, I caution against that. Okay, you don't want to back yourself into a corner that you eventually will have to back out from. Okay, this is something I've noticed in a lot of some Gemini folks, is that they will make an ultimatum and then eventually have to backtrack off of it. Are you overthinking? How can you balance hyper rationalism with intuition? Okay, this is really the balance point between all of the Piscean placements, Saturn and Neptune, and our Gemini placements. Where do you need to release the weight of knowing too much? This is another Gemini issue. Is the suit of swords in the tarot talks about thoughts, ideas, and the 10 is a point where we are oversaturated with some of those. The 10s of any suit, we're oversaturated with thoughts and ideas in this decan. We're oversaturated with passion in the wands. We're oversaturated with emotional idealism in the cups. And then we're oversaturated with material things like wealth in the 10 of pentacles. So where can we release what we think we know and surrender to being guided? And then how can you embrace closure and live with the consequences? This is definitely a decan of consequences. When you choose a lot in life, you're choosing the pros and the cons of that life. And when you make a choice, you're going to have to live with the letting go of the other choice that you didn't choose, and that can feel heavy at times. And then finally, can you surrender to love and infuse life into your highest priority? This is one of the solutions that T. Susan Chang talks about in her 36 Secrets book, where her remedies for this decan, the challenges of this decan, one of which is the Two of Cups, which is the next decan in the cycle, where we're surrendering to love. We're opening our heart to someone else. We're breathing life into what we want to nurture into maturity. And she talks about the Two of Pentacles as potentially a remedy as well. Finding a change of scenery, breaking up old habits, taking a trip, shaking up your routines. My compromise with having to deal with all the other things that we're trying to work through is maybe we're not going to go away for 5 days, but we're definitely going to do a few like little day trips so that we don't have to feel the pressure of traveling for that long, but can still get outside of our daily habits and routines. I don't know about all of you, but I find traveling is wonderful, but it also is, it's a project in and of itself. It is not just, oh, we're just going to go on a trip. Like there's preparations that can be very stressful. Especially if you're not used to leaving home very often. There were just a lot of things in place that would have happened before we left that just were not happening because of the other priorities that had cropped up. So those are some things to think about with Gemini 3. So I'm going to stop my share here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little stretch here. I think this is a nice point in the show where we should stretch out and get a little drink of water. This is a great opportunity for you to stretch as well, to get a drink, to get a snack. It's also the time in the show where I say, hey, if you can do me a huge favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the newsletter. Okay. If you want to make a donation, this is a great time to hit the little $sign in the chat for a super chat or a super sticker. It's always appreciated. Oh, gotta shake it out, right? Today I'm wearing purple for Jupiter and getting a little bit of like that spring energy with the green hoodie too. Okay. It's important to move your body, especially if you're sitting too long. We've been sitting here for like an hour and a half. And I have to just pay attention to my body and keep it rolling. It feeds your brain too. If we sit too long, I feel like our ideas can get stagnated as well. One of the things I highly recommend is if you're dealing with a problem and you just can't figure out a solution, just go for a walk. I feel like I heard someone say that there's nothing that a walk makes worse. It can really open you up to new ideas because you're just moving your body. You're putting things into motion, and you might be able to see. You might be able to relax. You might be able to get some new nature. Might run into some neighbors that have some ideas. There's all sorts of possibilities. So, movement is important. So I'm going to check in with the chat here. And then what we'll do in the final part of this, we will look at an animal and we will look at an I-Ching, but we'll also take it briefly through the houses. So I'm going to pull the chat box up here again. I've got a bunch of Gemini tendencies here with so many windows open. I'm just going to see where you're all at with the chat. So let's see. Oh, Diffie says with the motorcycle, I meant Tanya, not you. Well, I don't know if she's the type to be on a motorcycle either. There, Diffie. Like, I think the two of us, our Taurus moons are kind of like, I don't know about that. But we both tend to be slightly risk averse, but it's an interesting idea. The other reason that might not work, Dimpy, is that for Tanya's work, she moves a lot of things around. She's the manager of a farmer's market, and the types of vehicles we're looking at are ones that are able to move things around. And I know that might be an American cliche of like, we need these, hermit crab shell cars to like have these like, be able to carry everything with us all the time. But, if the shoe fits. Let's see. I need the new Apple AI glasses. Why, Paul? Like, to what end? I have an aversion to like putting something on my face that is electronic. I'm just not into that. Like I think there might be some cool applications for it, but I'm somewhat of a Luddite, so you're probably not going to see me in AI glasses anytime soon. I have enough challenges with reality itself, and going into navigating other realities right now. This feels overwhelming. Okay, let's see. Slava says, my IC is 17 degrees of Gemini, so it's 9 of Swords. How do you interpret this? I very often have nightmares, mostly at home. Well, Slava, to get a good read on your chart, I'd have to look at your entire chart. So I would suggest scheduling a reading for that. But it depends on the placement of your Mercury. But I will also say that the IC shows us sort of the conditions of our roots, the conditions where we, it can represent our family. It can represent our parents. It can represent kind of the conditions that we were raised in. Like, here's an example. My IC is in the middle decan of Scorpio. And my home didn't feel like a safe space. It felt like a place where there was always these emotional innuendos and trying to figure out how to survive. It put me in fight or flight mode a lot. And with your IC in the second decan of Gemini, there's probably a lot of choices that brought you a lot of stress in your life when you were young, or with your home or your parent experience, where maybe you got thrust into the position where you had to choose between things, and that probably brought some stress. So, I hope that you will be able to resolve some of those things as you get older, and as you are, coming into awareness of the things that you really need too. For me, I've learned that I need a lot of privacy in my home, and I don't feel safe until I have a lot of space and privacy. But maybe for you, communication might be the part that could really resolve some of the tension, really like talking it out. Diffie's really pushing the motorcycle today with the sidecar. All I could think of was like Indiana Jones and like all the where they're like having that high speed chase, like the motorcycle with the sidecar. No thanks. Um. All right. Hey, Callie at the beach is here. Nice to see you, friend. All right, so I'm gonna take these through the houses, and I'm gonna show you each rising sign, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Okay. So what we're looking at here to begin with is, hold on, let me make sure that I have everything in the right space here. Navigating many windows, friends. Whoops, that was not the one I wanted. Patience, please. There it is. Okay, can everybody see the chart with an Aries rising on there? I'm on a little bit of a delay, but here is an Aries rising chart. So for Aries rising, you are going to be experiencing this new moon in the third house, potentially related to topics like siblings, your immediate environment, related to friendships, related to learning experiences where you're starting a new ritualized learning practice. Daily habits and rituals are part of the third house as well, being the joy of the moon. So we're experiencing something where you may have to make a choice when it comes to, like, maybe if you're an Aries rising, you're starting a new educational experience and you can't do everything, Aries rising. As much as your ambition might want to lead you to study all the things all the time, you may have to let go of one thing, or you may have to let go of something in your daily routine so that you can prioritize the things that are most important to you. You might be feeling some pressure from Saturn in the 12th house that's asking you to retreat rather than engage socially. So I think that there's a lot of tension right now between the need to retreat and the need to engage socially. So, but you can look to maybe some assistance from Venus, and Mars in your 5th house. So exploring your personal creativity and being able to, shine your light out there could really be an assistance in this particular experience. Okay, so I'm going to go a little quicker through these today than I have in the past. So, all right, so I'm going to go to Taurus rising. So with Taurus rising, we're seeing the new moon in the 2nd house. So we have the 2nd house related to personal finances, everything that supports you. As I was telling you about all of the challenges of the 12th house being pulled away from the point of power at the ascendant, okay? The 2nd house is everything that's kind of your support system that's supporting you personally, whether that's money, resources, all of those things. Your skill set is also a part of that. So you might want to consider, like, all right, I can't purchase everything, something needs to go, or I can't make money in every single possible way. I've got to choose something. I can't reskill in every single way. I've got to make a choice. This is the time to make a choice. There may be some tension from Saturn and Neptune. And again, we want to look at the Neptune square also as being part of the conversation here. There may be some tension from the groups that you're a part of, Taurus rising. You may be reevaluating your relationship with a group. You may have been a little bit idealistic about the group that you're a part of, and now you're starting to understand the reality of this. I just had a friend who went to an astrology conference who was a Taurus rising, and I feel like they got a face full of reality as far as what the astrological community is all about. And some parts of it are amazing. Other parts of it may be, not as what was originally thought. So think about that. That could be part of it as well. And thinking about what your role is within that as well. I mean, consider too, Jupiter's really not a huge part of the conversation in this particular lunation. But Jupiter being in the first house of a Taurus rising chart, there is definitely an expansion going on for all of you folks. One thing I didn't mention about all this, and I will in the coming weeks, but next week, and I'm going to do a live stream next week, I believe, on the astrology of July, but we're going to go through a lot of squares to Uranus in the coming weeks. Mars is going to kick us off next weekend with a square to Uranus. So if you have a fixed rising like this Taurus rising chart here, there's some stuff coming with Mars square Uranus in the that's happening during this lunation cycle. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then Venus is going to square Uranus later in the year, and then we're going to have the Venus retrograde. And then, Mercury and the Sun will square Uranus. And this does happen generally with various planets, but it doesn't always happen every single year with like Mars in particular. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. I believe that's going to be perfecting June 25th or so, next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend. So slow down during that period of time. And slow your anger down around this period of time. This is an aspect during this lunation cycle where you could fire off an ultimatum that could get really, I don't know, not necessarily violent. It could get violent, or it could get very heated really quickly. So be very careful about that. I think that's part of this. We don't want to say it's me or you, or it's us or them. Like I think that's something that could really lead to the conflict of the Mars-Uranus square in particular. Okay, so that's Taurus rising. Money issues, right? If we keep going, here is Gemini rising. So here's one of our focal points is going to be on mutable or double-bodied signs, this lunation. So here we have the lunation happening in your first house. And this is going to be one that you're going to feel really personally if you're a Gemini rising. And one of the stories from one of our community members here was with Jennifer talking about having a real change in their living situation and their role, potentially, I'm guessing, Jennifer, with taking care of your dad, with him living with you. So your role could be changing. You may have to let go of one particular role so that you can infuse your energy, your personal energy, into another one. So Mercury is going to be assisting with this. Saturn is going to be providing some reevaluation and challenges and some slowing down energy from the 10th house. So there may be some things where we're maybe getting a little bit too idealistic about what we're capable of doing publicly because of the responsibilities that we have personally. And Saturn's going to say, you know what, you might have to let some of those things go. You may have to slow your roll a little bit and reevaluate what is most important to you. It's important to rely a little bit on the help that you may receive from your friends and people in your community, neighbors, siblings, friends. All of those things could be a point of support during this period of time as well for you, Gemini rising. Okay, Actia says, I'm a Gemini rising. This new moon is squaring my natal Mercury in the 4th house. This weekend, I'm putting my current home on the market and seeing a house my partner and I would like to buy. Wow. So definitely a big new moon for you with Gemini rising. Yeah, that's a lot going on. So that may necessitate a shift in your own energy and your outpouring of energy and things of that nature. It's interesting too, because Mercury rules your 4th house as a Gemini rising also. So anytime that we have those two topics that are conflated with one another, with the same planet ruling, that they're going to be kind of connected. So I would also examine Actia as not just with your home, but who do you want to be in your home? Like, who do you want to be in with this new foundation? That can be something that could lead you to the right answer and the right choice moving forward. And you also started your first job in your new career Monday, right? Okay, well, Actia, Saturn's about to retrograde in that career house, so there's going to probably be some new things that you'll have to learn that'll slow things down a little bit, but that's okay. If you're seeing your responsibility shift, just go with the process, restructure a little bit. That's okay. It's just going to be a learning curve. Devin is here. Hello, Devin. Glad I get to hear one of your talks, Spencer. I'm usually working during your Venus Day talks, right? So this is a Jupiter Day talk for sure. So welcome, Devin. I'm glad you're here with us today, friend. Glad you're doing a Jupiter Day talk because I always feel like temple or church the way you approach astrology. Yeah, so maybe this is sort of a different vibe than Venus, right? And maybe it is a little bit more Jupiterian. Maybe it's a little bit more orthodox today, a little bit less sensual potentially. I don't know, but there is definitely different flavors. I have a different flavor when I'm doing them on a Saturn day too. I usually do it either Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. There's been some rare Sunday ones, but it's definitely, you can feel the influence of the planetary day. So thanks, Devin, for being here with us. Lisa, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate you, friend. I love the dancing avocado or whatever this is here. I love it. Dimphy says, my ascendant sun and moon, all in mutable signs natally. Well, you're gonna get a face full of this new moon, Dimphy. So let's see. Actia says, totally great insight, Spencer. Thank you. And yes, I'll have a slow onboarding process and a steep learning curve for sure. Yeah, Actia, I mean, that's often how it goes when we're starting a new project and we're starting a new experience. I think that this summer is an opportunity to review a lot of things in our lives. We're going to have Saturn retrograde and Venus retrograding. So a lot of us have been wanting to move forward, myself included. I have Jupiter in my 10th house right now, and I've been really looking at ways to expand what I do publicly. And to be honest with you, to make some more money doing it. And because I have a lot more responsibilities that I did not have in the past. And it's going to take a lot of restructuring of our lives, of our skill set, of what we're comfortable doing. Like a lot of times we get comfortable in certain situations and we have to force ourselves outside of that comfort zone. And I think this summer a lot of it is about testing what will work and what won't, learning new things. Not necessarily having to see results right away, but reprocessing. And if we go into it with that idea in mind, I think that we'll have a better outcome. Okay, Cancer rising. Cancer rising, you are having a 12th house new moon. And your ascendant ruler's in the 12th, so this might be a time to take a break. Cancer rising's been doing a lot of stuff since Jupiter moved into their 10th, and they're probably just like, oh boy, do I get to rest? When do I get to rest? So this may be a good time to examine how you find peace, solitude, things of that nature. Maybe you have to let go of something so that you can find the type of sanctuary that is important to you. I think that what I've learned about 12th house transits is that oftentimes if there's a malefic in the 12th house, I've experienced this recently, it's really hard to find peace. If there is a benefic planet there, sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it's easier to relax and things like that. So this isn't a benefic or a malefic planet. It's kind of neutral with Mercury. But what I will say is that the 12th house ruler is in the 12th, and that is positive. So this may be a good time to just say, I got to eliminate this option so that I can finally relax. The other thing that can happen with a 12th house lunation or something like that is unfortunately, there may be something where you are having to deal with some kind of undermining influence. Remember, we talked about all the choices that face us in 12th house energy, the indecisiveness. This could be the beginning of another phase where you're going to have to, maybe work through some indecisiveness, and also a secret enemy that could be undermining you. Oftentimes, the secret enemy is really ourselves. Okay, so that's something that to keep in mind, is that if there's somebody that's you feel might be blocking some manifestation or rest, it's important to look internally and say, which part of myself is not integrated, which part of my own shadow is not integrated, so that I'm experiencing this as an external struggle. And when you can answer that question, oftentimes the external person struggle starts to fade away. And I've noticed this in my own life, is I oftentimes bring a manifestation of the exact internal struggle in an external circumstance. And when I finally get clear about what I really want or who I really am, then that person doesn't have any power over me, or that situation doesn't have any power over me anymore. So that's something to consider. Cancer risings with this lunation. You're also probably going to be examining your belief systems. There may be some rose-colored glasses around a teacher, around a learning cycle, around maybe a like a, I don't know, a guru, or like um, a religious organization or something like that that you're a part of. And there may be some tough Saturnian lessons that are coming in reviews about what you truly believe in, what really is animating your life. Look towards your second house, your own abilities. With Leo, Venus, and Mars there. It's okay to like say, you know what, I'm gonna try to. I don't know if the word is treat myself, but I think that there probably is a desire to spend some money right now if you're a Cancer rising. Uh, Sometimes I see this as sun sign charts too, as a Cancer sun. Sometimes I look at it as Cancer in the first house. Like I'm feeling like I'm ready to spend some money, but I have to be careful of it, that it's not too much. So just be careful about Mars being there as well, but also believe in yourself, right? Believe, your authentic expression can help bring the resources that you need, and maybe look to your authenticity to help move you through this challenging period of time. Okay, I'm gonna go to Leo rising, and I love these comments. I can't get to every single comment today, but I'm seeing all of you. Sometimes I do miss a comment here and there, because what happens is when they come rapid fire, it moves up and I can't always read every single thing. So I'm not trying to ignore everything. I'm just trying to keep us moving here today. So Leo rising. So this is a 11th house new moon for you. And this is a great time to initiate a new group endeavor. I will be launching my next guided group study after this new moon. Again, we're going to be studying The Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot by Marcus Katz and Tally Goodwin. You'll be able to sign up for that at the beginning of next week. I'm going to spend the weekend working on my promotional materials. So if you want to know when that goes live, please sign up for the newsletter. I will be announcing that on the newsletter so that you can sign up for it. I would love to see more of your faces in that group. We had a really, really awesome group this last time, and I hope that we can create that once again. You may be struggling with some partner financial issues. I've been going through the bureaucratic red tape of getting a loan, like to work on this car issue, and there's been some things that have slowed down with that. So you may be having to reevaluate shared resources, and maybe even releasing some of the expectations that you may have had that could have been Neptunian in nature. Maybe you thought that something was, you had a number of shared resources, but that turned out to be not necessarily the case. So that's something to consider, Leo rising. Right now, Leo rising, you have Venus and Mars in your first house. It's a good time to attract supporters. It's a good time to assert your will as well. I know that that's not always it can be fairly easy for Leo risings to do that, depending on the other placements in your chart. I know for me personally, there's been a push and a pull of trying to be receptive to the assistance that we need to get to move forward with our projects, and simultaneously the need to be aggressive and moving willfully towards the goal. I think it's a Leo rising right now. You're getting a push and a pull of receptivity and aggressive self-directed action. And there are going to be times where you're going to have to put your foot on the gas, and then times where you're going to have to put your foot on the brake and kind of coast a little bit. I've been experiencing that. Leo rising, you're having Jupiter in your 10th house too. So it's a great time to think about plans for the future for expanding what you're doing out in the world. I've got some things brewing like for the fall that I'm really excited about that are more long-term types of offerings. And I'm going to be working on that over the next few months with Jupiter there. So you may have a long-term project that you may be working on that's not necessarily ready, but it's good to make plans for it. Okay. Oh, Callie says, can't wait to sign up. When will it start? Yeah, the next guided group study, it's going to be very tarot and astrology focused. It's going to start on July 10th. So the second week of July, after all the holiday stuff, and we're going to go every other week. We're going to meet on Mondays, 1 o'clock Eastern time, and we meet for 6 sessions every other week. So it's about 3 months worth of meetups. There's a Discord server group where we have discussions. We meet on Zoom for a couple hours each time we meet up, have some really, really in-depth discussions. We try to incorporate tarot, astrology, philosophy, mythology, all of the things into it. And we just have some really amazing exchanges. I've really enjoyed our conversations recently. Yeah, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But July 10th is really the date that I'm focusing on for the beginning of that next cycle. And I'll give you all at least a month to sign up for it. And if you're needing some, like a payment plan or something, I have some payment plans available as well. Okay, let's talk Virgo rising. So Virgo rising, we've come to another angular moon. Sorry, let me get this out of here. Oh, gotta get my circles right. Gotta get my circles right. Oh, this thing's in the way. Sorry, I just have all these weird things here, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm moving them around right. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here is the 10th house new moon for the Virgo risings. Now this is an interesting one, another interesting one, because your chart ruler is Mercury. So you have recently probably benefited from Mercury moving into its own domicile of Gemini, an improvement of its condition in Taurus for sure. And there's probably a lot of things going on, a lot of different things pulling you in different directions for Virgo risings, especially with your public self, with your career, like things that you're doing publicly, public projects, visible things. So this will be a time where you might not be able to juggle every single project. You might have to figure out what your highest priorities are and let go of some things that are, not the highest priority at this point. And that's not too difficult for you, Virgo risings. I mean, your natural tendencies is one of like harvest and of being able to eliminate things that aren't, serving you at the moment. I think it's a contractive type of mercurial experience rather than an expansive one like Gemini. So just be your most Virgoian self, and you should be able to work through this with ease. There are some challenges with partnerships that need to be reevaluated around this period of time for Virgo rising. You've had Neptune hanging out there, like maybe there was a partnership that was a little too good to be true, and now Saturn is really saying it's time to get real about partners, maybe business partners or romantic partners. And there's some restructuring that's going to be happening. There may be some endings with that relationship, but instead of just thinking about it as an all or nothing, is it going to continue or end? Just think about it as which parts of this need to end, or which parts of this need to be restructured with Saturn turning retrograde. You may need some recharge time too, Virgo rising, with Venus and Mars moving through your 12th house. So this may be a good time to just take a break, take a vacation. You probably need some time off, with all the action in your 10th house going on. So just chill out, relax, try not to be too hard on yourself or the people in your life, and you should come through it okay. Okay, let's move on to Libra rising. I need to get a little drink of my shake here. I'm feeling the low blood sugar energy. There we go. That's my kryptonite. I have a lot of endurance for talking, for analyzing, for all of this stuff, for interacting. But if I'm hungry and my blood sugar starts to get too low, that's when my brain just does not work anymore. So that's why I have to continue to charge the battery as we go on these epic journeys together. All right, Libra rising. Let's roll. Let's roll. Libra rising has this new moon in the 9th house. So this is something where you might be starting a new pilgrimage of sorts, maybe a new journey. Maybe there's travel involved, but maybe there's a new belief system involved. This could be something where you need to make some choices about what you really believe in. What are your ethics? What are you really basing your life around, right? Some of those, you can't keep every path alive as far as like every belief system. I know that you try to be fair and you try to see the perspective of every single, vision, but if you keep waffling back and forth and you don't eventually say, well, this is my line, these are my boundaries, then you can find yourself in some sticky situations. So this might be something where it's important to set some healthy boundaries. It's important to maybe initiate a new cycle of exploration when it comes to your belief systems, higher education. The law also is associated with the 9th house, so there may be a new legal situation that you're embracing. You have Saturn hanging out in your 6th house right now, and Neptune squaring. Okay, so this is an energy where there's probably a lot of work going on for you, Libra rising. A lot of things that you're having to deal with that are maybe blocking completion. All right, 6th house is a house that throws us obstacles that pull us away from completion. So there might be, some sort of chronic issue, whether it's a health issue, whether it's an injury or an illness, or like some hard work that you're not getting a lot of credit for, where you're still going through the process. To me, the 6th house is very much a process-orientated house. And instead of getting overly attached to outcomes right now, it's an important time to be okay with things being in process. Also, you have Venus and Mars in your 11th house, so there could be some support from the groups in your life or from beneficiaries, from the like money from the government or something like that. Maybe you're getting your tax return or something like that in the mail. I don't know. This is just random type of thing. But you may have some group energy where you're needing to be your authentic self within the group. Okay, let's keep going. Now we get to Scorpio rising. Scorpio rising, we are seeing a new moon in your 8th house. All right. So the 8th house is the derived house, the derived 2nd house from the 7th. So we can think of that as resources of a partner. We also consider that a house as the 8th house is called one of the gateways, the gate of Hades, gate to the underworld. So there's an association with death and things that come after a completion. 7th house is the house of the setting sun. 8th house is the house that's going to be on the descendant after the sun sets. So everything that happens after completion. Oftentimes that can be the distribution of resources from a will. It can be all of the things that you have to take care of at a funeral or something like that. It can be all of the emotions that happen after you've lost something. So there could be also some grief associated with that 8th house. So you may have to pick and choose the things that you can handle, the responsibilities that you can handle after some sort of completion. There is a square to your 5th house from Neptune and Saturn. And there may be some feelings of sorrow, some unrealistic expectations when it comes to relating to your children. There could be some reevaluations about, the responsibilities that you have around children or your personal creativity. It could also be due to a romance. 5th house is how we seek entertainment, how we seek romantic partnerships and things like that. Anything that brings us pleasure. With Saturn in the 5th house, there may be some tough lessons around pleasure right now for Scorpio risings. This could be like getting sober after a period of addiction. And there may be some backsliding with that, with Saturn moving retrograde. So stay strong if you're feeling really vulnerable, Scorpio rising. If you're going through a rebirth, a transformation, a shedding of skin, realize that it's not always a linear process, and that sometimes you take a step backwards so that you can move forward again. Oftentimes, like I have some challenges with eating healthy. Sometimes I will eat something that I've sworn off of. I don't really do well with like gluten or like low quality like fried foods or cheese or stuff like that. And I'll be like, I'm not going to eat that again because I feel so bloated and sick afterwards. And sometimes I will lose my what is the word I'm looking for? I will lose my discipline around it, and I'll eat it, and then it'll remind me that I was like, no, that makes me feel like shit, and so I need to stop now. So there may be something like that happening with Saturn retrograding, but ultimately maybe it'll be for the best. It'll help you move forward. And it could be a romance too. It could be like, oh, I know this person isn't good for me, but I know that I've got to, maybe I re-engage, but for the specific purpose of ultimately letting go. Scorpio rising, you have Mars and Venus in the 10th house right now. So a lot of focus on your career. Your ascendant ruler is in the 10th house. So there may be both conflicts and also support in your 10th house. You may be feeling that gas and brake type of energy, the aggressive and receptive energy coming through your career. I guess what I will suggest is just be yourself, just be your authentic self and advocate for your own needs. And you don't have to prove anything to anybody else if you are just being your true self. Okay, let's keep going. Jennifer says, so wondering, Spencer, when you talked about the new cycle beginning for me with perfections, do you mean all personal planets are starting new cycles with the moon activating them if the second house is Cancer? Well, when you're in a first house perfection year, Jennifer, you are seeing that particular house be activated, and the particular planet that's associated with that, in your case, Mercury, becoming your new Time Lord. Now, the first house is sort of like a new cycle, right? It's a new personality. It's a new, like, this is a new skin that you're putting on, right? Or a new like persona or something of that nature. What's interesting about the perfections when it comes back to the first house is what it really does is it really reaffirms all the placements in your natal chart. Because when you perfect a chart, you move everything the amount of houses that the perfection is happening. So like, for example, in this Scorpio rising chart, if they were in a first house perfection, all of these placements would be activated, I guess. Or placements in the first house. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit conflated with this. If, for example, there was a second house perfection, we would perfect the sun and the moon to the 9th house. Okay, so there you can perfect a planet, not just a ascendant. So the first house perfection would be talking about the ascendant being moved and perfected. So that's another really great way of looking at this technique, is all the planets kind of shift over the number of houses that the perfection is moving them around. But the basic gist of a first house perfection, Jennifer, is that look at your ruling planet, Mercury, in your natal chart, and in the solar return, I think is useful as well. Look at the themes of that. Look at all the aspects that are happening in your chart, and those things are going to be sort of activated. Like, it's kind of, first house years are more like you're really going to be living the chart that you were given. Like, it's going to be all the themes that are baked into your chart sort of become a little bit more prominent during a first house year, whereas some of them may be deactivated or shifted a little bit when it's moved around. So I hope that was helpful and not too confusing. Okay, let's finish this up with the last series here. So Sagittarius rising, we have another mutable sign on the ascendant, and we are now dealing with a 7th house new moon. So this is a new start in partnerships. This is something where you might have to choose in a partnership, where I would be very careful about the ultimatums that you may issue in a partnership if you're having some challenges, if you're trying to choose between if you're dating or something, this could be like, well, you're not going to be able to date every single person forever without one of them, maybe getting upset or something like that. Or there may not be, all these issues within a relationship that you can keep open-ended, right? You're going to have to kind of commit on some level. Some of that commitment is probably being necessitated by Saturn in your fourth house. You may have to change some ideas about your living situation, maybe related to your parents, maybe related to your family. You may have to release some illusions around that. You may be feeling a lot of responsibility to your family. I know I've talked to a few Sagittarius risings recently who have felt really grounded recently. Like there's Sag risings like to have the freedom of movement, and many of you right now are feeling Saturn in the fourth saying, you're going to have to be a little bit more grounded. You don't have as much freedom of movement, probably due to a family challenge or a family responsibility. So this is a good time to start reevaluating what your true responsibilities are and how you might, what true freedom is to you. Again, freedom is not a condition of never having a responsibility. Freedom isn't having no commitments. Freedom is more of a mental state. Oftentimes I find that I feel most free within a container, within a limitation, rather than just having everything open-ended, mostly because I feel the prison of choices, right? Sometimes having too many options can be its own prison. So think about it in that regard as well. You're probably having some assistance from the ninth house. Maybe there's a teacher in your life that is being helpful. Maybe you're figuring out what your true beliefs are and your authenticity through exploring your belief system. So that's something to examine as a Sag rising as well. Your ascendant ruler is in the sixth right now. So again, you're probably feeling like there's a lot of work that you're having to do or plan for that you're not getting a ton of credit for, but that's okay. It's a temporary position. Learn to embrace the process. Like they used to say in Philadelphia, trust the process. If you're a sports fan, there was this guy, what was his name? Hinkie, the GM of the Philadelphia 76ers, really embraced a tanking model. And if you're not familiar with that concept, that's like losing on purpose to be able to get a high draft pick. And they had a number of years in Philadelphia where they were just terrible. And they got a bunch of high draft picks and they were able to draft like Joel Embiid and a few other players. And the whole thing around that was trust the process, trust the process. We're losing, but it's for a reason. It was funny that GM was an Aquarius. And so they were very much taking the long range view. And it's worked out okay for them. They haven't won a championship yet, but they've been pretty good for the last few years. After some of those, they've paid off some of that patience. Okay, so let's talk Cap rising here. So Capricorn rising, you are experiencing the new moon in the sixth house. So this could be some new responsibilities coming your way where maybe you can't handle every single responsibility. Sorry, Cap rising. I know you want to. I know you want to juggle and take on all the things that everyone else can't handle. Bless your hearts. But maybe it's time to delegate. Maybe there's just some priorities that you have to infuse your life and, you infuse your energy into. And that's going to help you relax a little bit more. Pluto's retrograded back into your first house. So there's probably some other things that are bubbling up from underneath the surface that you didn't quite deal with the last time around, and now it's time to tie up those loose ends. Saturn is in your third house, and the square to Neptune is to the third house. So daily routines and travel. I'm just laughing because my partner is a Cap rising, and she's been dealing with Saturn in the third house, just basically killing her old vehicle. And now she's having to deal with a new vehicle and all the challenges of getting from point A to point B in her daily life, which is also a third house signification. You Capricorn rising, have Venus and Mars in the 8th house right now, maybe providing some assistance through getting a loan or something like that. But also maybe there's also some challenges around getting that loan. This has been our experience personally. But there's also some, you know, significations with Saturn turning retrograde as the ruler of your ascendant in the 3rd house. This is a really great time to reevaluate your daily habits, your daily routines. How do you go through your daily life? How do you get from point A to point B? What are some of the things how do you arrange your day so that you can be most productive, right? And really, this is so funny that I love when I can see someone's life playing out in the astrology. Like the overcoming square from my partner's 3rd house is like Saturn is throwing obstacles to her getting, a lot of her work done because of the challenges of her not having a vehicle. And that's been really like a limiting factor. But that's going to change hopefully this weekend as the sun moves into Cancer and then there's a trine. We're trying to get this worked out by this weekend. So with all of this, friends, relief is coming in Cancer season. I think that there's Cancer season has its own challenges, namely the squares between the Leo planets and the Uranus and Taurus, and oppositions to Pluto during Cancer season. Okay, but this particular square with Saturn is going to start to be alleviated as we move into Cancer season. KP1231 says Cleveland sports fandom defines the process. Yeah, you've gone through those tanking years. You got LeBron though, and you got a championship out of it. So there's that, And Cleveland has an interesting young team. The Cavaliers, at least. I don't know about the Browns. Browns are an exercise in futility, but so it goes. Can't win them all. Okay, let's move on. Aquarius rising. Does Cleveland have a hockey team? I don't remember. The Yellow Jackets or something like that. Columbus. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the different sports. I'm not as hip to hockey, which is ironic because that's the sport I spent the most time playing as a young person. But neither here nor there. Okay, Aquarius rising. You have the new moon in the 5th house related to children and the way that you seek pleasure and entertainment, things that happen, legacies that you want to pass on, things that happen after trying to create a firm foundation. This could be wrapping up loose ends after doing something to your home or moving or something like that. You are getting a square from Saturn in your 2nd house and Neptune. Saturn is going to retrograde in your 2nd house. So Aquarius rising, there is some money issues that are potentially coming up. Now, you do have Jupiter in the 4th, so maybe you're trying to take on, I'm just visualizing one particular thing with this where maybe you're doing some remodeling, maybe you're trying to purchase a new home or remodel a home and the budget has gotten bloated or something like that, and now there's some reevaluation of the process. Try not to be too idealistic about the resources that you do have or the support that you do have, because Saturn's about to shift directions and show you the reality of your situation. Having some objectivity around it is one of your strengths. So know when to stay the course and when to retreat. That's another thing to think about, Aquarius rising. You have Venus and Mars in your 7th house, so there could be some support from a partner, but there could be also some tension around that too. Try to find some authenticity in your relationships so that you can, advocate for your own needs within the relationship as well, but also appreciate the authenticity of your partner as well. Okay. So finally, last but certainly not least, our patient Pisceans. Pisces rising. Okay, Callie at the beach, are you Aquarius rising? He says, oh dear, probably due to the wedding expenses for my daughter on June 25th. Oh boy, yeah. So if we just go back real quick, you have, you know, fifth house, right? Your daughter, new moon. You have a lot of activity in the seventh house, which is like, I think seventh house can be like a wedding type of deal. And then Saturn in the overcoming square. Yeah, it plays out, doesn't it? Expansion in the family. Right? That's perfect. Perfect example there, Callie, if you're a Aquarius rising. Okay, Pisces rising. All right. Yeah, this is the beauty of doing this live and hearing your stories, is we can hear in real time how this is playing out for you in your life. Okay, so finally, Pisces rising, another angular new moon, one in your fourth house. Probably a lot of questions lately about your living situation, your family, your parents, your home, and it now is a time to choose. Like, if you've been exploring your options, this is probably a good time to choose and make a choice. You're not going to be able to keep all of those options open without creating more suffering. You all have been going through some challenging times with Neptune moving through your first, and Saturn in particular, kind of raining on your parade. Like, I'm thinking of that Barbra Streisand song, "Don't Rain on My Parade," but Saturn sort of does that. And Pisces is all about faith in the unseen and the unseen things that connect us spiritually. But Saturn is saying some of those dreams are you're going to have to get real with some of those dreams. And you may have to reevaluate your role in all of those things. There's probably been some real frustration about your living situation and feeling idealistic about who you want to be within it and what you're doing within it. And some of that's going to get alleviated as we move into Cancer season, for sure. That's going to probably feel pretty good. But it's a good time to slow down and to incorporate some of the changes that you've been going through in your life one day at a time. You got Venus and Mars in your sixth house, so maybe you have some support from some people that either work for you or contractors or something like that. If you're working on a house or something, just be careful that you don't get into conflicts with them. Especially when Mars starts to square Uranus next weekend. It could be very easy to have like an accident or an injury or an illness or something like that, or get into an argument with like a sibling or something like that also. You got Jupiter in your third, expanding your daily habits and routines and asking you to plan for your education or something of that nature. Okay. Any questions, friends? That is taking the new moon through the houses. So this has been a wonderful experience with all of you. We're going to end our session today with an animal and an I-Ching, and I will pull this up. First of all, the I-Ching that I got for you was hexagram number 57. So hexagram 57 is called gentle influence, compliance, humility, the penetrating wind, persistence. Okay, so we're being asked to like have a gentle type of influence here. And there's one changing line. And that changing line says, advancing and retreating, it is beneficial to persevere like a warrior. This is bringing to mind the indecisiveness, but also the Mars Venus energy of foot on the brake and foot on the gas type of thing. So I'm just going to read from one of my favorite translations, which is Jack Balkin's The Law of Change. He says, indecisiveness and vacillation will achieve nothing now. You must approach matters with a more disciplined attitude. Don't let yourself be controlled by your doubts and fears. Decide what is the right course of action and see it through. Adopt the military virtues of courage, determination, and self-discipline if you want to succeed. Okay? So this is a time when if you're trying to make the right choice, you do have to exercise some mental discipline around it, right? You can't just keep vacillating. This is one of the dangers of Gemini, is second guessing ourselves all the time. 12th house, second guessing. So we just have to, again, when you make a choice, this is something I've learned too. Ultimately, a choice will bring us to a similar place eventually. Let's say we make a quote unquote wrong choice. Eventually we will learn from that experience and we will learn that that's what we don't want. and then we'll get to the place that we were originally intending to go. Okay. And I know that that's frustrating, and I know that that sucks, but sometimes that's where we learn our greatest lessons. So we have to be decisive. We have to just make the choice. Again, you can circle back around if it doesn't work out the first time, because there's some retrograde stuff this year that it's going to help us to do that. It's changing to hexagram number 9, which is called small accumulation. The taming power of the small, restraint of the powerful by the weak, small farming, taking care of the little things, accumulation of small advantages, using gentleness and friendly persuasion, temporarily held back, but rain will come. That's important. This is the hexagram number 9 of feeling like a rainstorm coming. You know, like you can see the clouds are coming in. You feel the barometric pressure. Everything is starting to like build up. And it's like, oh, when are we going to get liberation and deliverance from this energy? So we may still be going through that towards the end of Gemini season, but I really do think that the rainstorm that's going to come, Cancer season is going to, you know, wash away some of this indecisiveness. And Cancer season happens Wednesday. Okay, so you got a couple days where you're going to feel this back and forth. Keep in mind as well, first of all, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but the moon's going to be out of bounds during this lunation. So we're going to be feeling extra emotional from starting tomorrow until, you know, about 3 days afterwards. The other thing that I would suggest with this too is that right after this new moon, the moon goes into a Hellenistic void of course until Wednesday morning. Okay, till about 9 o'clock Eastern time Wednesday morning, from about 8:45 p.m. Sunday night to 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday morning, a Hellenistic void where the moon is not going to be making any aspects, traditional aspects, okay, across sign boundaries for 30 degrees. So we do have, and I'll just tell you exactly what's going on here. I have it written down. I apologize for forgetting to tell this, but I'm glad I caught it. So at 7 degrees of Cancer, the moon is going to trine Saturn in Pisces. That's the beginning of our void of course on Sunday, the 18th. It will end its void of course at 7 degrees of Leo at 9:14 a.m. when it squares Jupiter on the 21st, okay, in Taurus. So 7 degrees of Cancer to 7 degrees of Leo, moon is void of course. What does that mean? Well, traditional astrologer said that nothing would come of the matter. So just, it's a great time to relax, to just be at peace, rest your mind. Maybe the solution for a lot of these things is just to not force it, you know, that you'll finally get the release that you need at Cancer season, potentially. I wouldn't make any of those big ultimatum decisions around the void of course moon, because nothing will come of it. So if you want to get some stuff done, try to get it done before Sunday afternoon. And then if you don't get it in at that point, just be real chill about trying to force any big major decisions until Wednesday morning, if that makes sense. And I know that some of you will have to make some decisions, but it'll probably work out a little bit better if you just give it a little bit of time. Okay, so the animal that I have for you is the caterpillar. The caterpillar, okay? So this is teaching us right now that we're in process. I love the synchronicity of this. Trust the process. There is no animal that talks more about trusting the process than the caterpillar, because they are going through an intense period of transformation, but they need to eat, they need to get fat. And then they go through this cocoon process where they literally, they don't know what they're going to be when they emerge from that cocoon. They are dissolving all of their cells into this goo and reforming into something else. And it's probably painful, it's probably scary, but it's instinctual. This is just something that's happening. This is just a process that they're going through. And this is what Caterpillar is asking us to do, is that things happen in stages. They don't just happen right when we want them to. It really speaks to delayed gratification. It speaks to that cocooning phase. It encourages us to give ourselves the time and space that we need. To, let's see. To embrace the hidden potential in the process that we're going through, okay? Again, you may not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel yet, but you have to have faith through it, okay? There's going to be times where some people aren't going to understand your process. Some people aren't going to understand why you're going into the cocoon. They're not going to understand you dissolving one form so that you can become this other thing that you just instinctually have to be. So just relax, friends. You know, the time is coming, and a lot of these things that are creating tension, they're about to get better, and one day at a time. All right, my friends, that's what I have for you today. Please do me a huge favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, sign up for the email list. Okay, if you want to know when the next group study is starting, 7/10. Okay, it's starting in July 10th. But I will share the link to sign up for it on the email list starting next week. I would love for you to join me. If you want to make a material donation to the work I'm doing, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. You can purchase the Decans webinar. Gemini is on sale until the 21st. Or you can schedule a reading. And I would love to work with you. And I have worked with many of you in the chat, and it's been a wonderful experience. So hang in there, friends. It's been a wonderful time chatting with you and spending time with you on this Thursday afternoon. And I will see you next week, I think, for the astrology of July. We'll probably be doing that around the end of the next week. So looking forward to hanging out with you again. And just remember, be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind. It's very easy to get a little bit severe in the third decan of Gemini. So practice that kindness, practice that gentleness, and then you will be kind to yourself too. Don't beat yourself up internally, and that's going to be a lot easier to put some good out into the world. All right, friends, that's what I have. Take care. Peace.